This next one, sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Gerard. Can Jim shed any light on Hulk Hogan leaving the AWA for the WWF? I watched the AWA documentary on the WWE Network, and Hogan explained about feeling aggrieved about Vern not putting the title on him because Vern demanded bigger cuts from Hogan's gimmicks and international bookings, plus some unnamed costs. If he did, and taking the money... All right, it's a little confusing here. Basically, he's saying the Hogan story is that Vern wanted gimmick money and Japan money. Is this true? And is there another side to the story that Jim knows? What was the overall effect of Hogan leaving the AWA for WWF?
Good Lord. Well, last question first. The overall effect was not good for the AWA. That was one of the hottest periods that they had in years and years, and probably the hottest period for business in Minneapolis and St. Paul specifically. 82 to 83. And I mean, a lot of it was Hogan, but Hogan got hot, but then everything got hot. So it wasn't a death blow immediately when Hogan left. And then Vince started poaching because Hogan wanted to take David Schultz to work with. He wanted to take Mean Gene because they had such great chemistry as an announcer. But still, a lot of Vern's guys, Vern had a pretty good 84, 85, and then 86 started the downhill slide. But
once he lost the Road Warriors, because he had Hogan and then he got the Road Warriors, but then once he lost them, there was no one to replace it.
Yeah, the Road Warriors were, and still even in 82, 83, even Crusher was still over. Remember, as he defied all logic and reason with those people because he was the Steve Austin of Milwaukee. So, but anyway, we weren't in the room with Hogan and Vern. I believe that Vern probably wanted a cut of anything he could have got a cut of.
And Japan was an issue because Vern had a relationship with Giant Baba.
Yeah.
And Hogan, through Vince McMahon Sr., had been getting booked with New Japan since, 81? 80?
Well, it was the same thing that Vince Sr. had the problem with Bruno because Bruno was loyal to Giant Baba. They had been friends. When Baba came over here in 61, 62, when they first used him on top in the States and then took him back to be one of the guys in Japan, the big stars. They knew each other from then, and Bruno, whenever he went, even though Vince Sr. had the booking deal with Inoki, they even ran the Madison Square Garden series sometimes in the 80s in New Japan. Bruno always went for Baba. He was always loyal. And it was kind of a modern day thing where Hogan already had the in, but Vern, in the same way, Baba always used the Americans that weren't affiliated with Vince, no matter who they were, AWA, NWA, whatever. And Inoki always used specifically the WWF guys and then guys from England, Mexico, Germany, etc. So that's why their in-ring styles were so different between New Japan and All Japan. Anyway, the scuttlebutt at the time was that Hogan was mad because, not mad, but, he saw the writing on the wall. They never were going to give him the belt. Vern, in those days, I've heard, still believed that, Hogan's a great attraction, but he can't fucking wrestle. And truthfully and honestly, I don't know whether Hogan needed the belt. As over as he was in the AWA, but I'm sure there were other financial problems between him and Vern. I never met Vern, and obviously never worked for him, but everybody I've ever talked to that did had a story about having a financial problem with Vern. But the biggest thing was Vince had seen Hogan in Japan. You can probably recount the chain of events better than I can, but Vince had the idea to go national. Vince had obviously seen fucking Hogan. Vince had that in his mind. He had to. And Vince goes to Japan and makes a deal with fucking Hogan while he's on tour over there. And when Hogan comes back to America, he doesn't ever come back to the AWA. That's basically the overview, right?
That's a large part of it. You got to remember, Hogan was mad, and I don't doubt him on this. He says he came back from Japan and Vern was selling Hulkamania stuff behind his back without giving him a cut. This was the Wild West in terms of wrestling merchandise. I believe that.
Yeah.
I do believe that. But Vince wanted to buy the AWA. It was the largest landmass in terms of a territory. They had Hogan, who was the biggest star coming out of Rocky III in America and Japan. They had a lot of big stars. They had a lot of territory, a lot of big TV stations. They were on the West Coast. Vince was just going to the West Coast. He wanted to buy Vern out. Vern and Greg laughed him off. He did the next best thing. He got his biggest baby face. He got the biggest television personality, Gene Okerlund, who's on the show locally. Got David Schultz. He was trying to get Jerry Blackwell. Jerry Blackwell decided not to go with them, but he was supposed to be on that first taping. And for the next several years, Vince just, one by one, it wasn't just the Hogans or the Jesse Venturas. It wasn't just the big stars. Anyone, a commentator, a random commentator, anyone who Vern hired, Vince found a way to get.
Almost like it was somewhat personal. As Boyd Pierce said one time, he was just a commentator. Anyway, so that's basically it. There's, I'm sure everybody on all sides of that issue had some complaint or other, and probably most everything that was mentioned in that email, but that's just the biggest deal. Vince wanted Hogan, he wanted to go national, and he made when he saw that, did Vince go on very many Japanese tours in those days, or did he just happen to be in Japan when he knew that Hogan would be over there 5,000 miles away from Vern?
Senior or junior? Because Senior did go over to Japan.
Vince Senior did go over for the MSG tournament events where they do the opening ceremonies with the flowers and the girls in the ring and everything. But I don't think Vince Senior stayed for the month-long tour, did he?
No one stayed for the whole tour, but Vince Jr., I think, started going over there. I don't know if he went over in 83, but certainly by 84. I mean, he's at Hogan's wedding. They even had one of those photos in the Andre special, because it's Andre and Hogan with Vince. Inoki's there, Adonis. I've seen the photos. I have them. But Vince was at his wedding. Think about that. That was like, I think, November. So Vince and Inoki are there, no Vern. But here's the guy in Japan who's paying Hogan all that money, and here's the guy in New York who he already knows. It wasn't like he didn't have this relationship with the McMahons already. He already knew Vince Sr., didn't know Vince Jr. as well, but it all fit together perfectly. The timing was amazing.
I wonder if Vern was invited to the wedding and didn't come, or if he was snubbed.
It's a good question.
Maybe we can get Greg to tell us. He's a fountain of information.
See, Greg says some interesting things, and unfortunately, because no one heard them forever, a lot of people doubt them, but they're interesting. I kind of want some of them to be true, but I don't know if they are. Like the story that Vern was upset about Hogan jumping because he was going to give him the belt. And the plan was in early 84 for Hogan to get a run with the belt and feud with Andre. It sounds great. I don't know how true it is. That's the issue.
Yeah, well, wait a minute. It's one thing to give a guy the belt when he's already working in your territory, but how was he going to get Andre in 1984? Vince locked the doors on Andre.
Well, they were still booking Andre into late 83. Remember, Andre was booked on all those big shows at the end of 83 with Hogan for the AWA. So Andre was working the AWA territory semi-regularly, like he worked everywhere else, but that big group photo of the whole team, you know the one I'm talking about, the 83 group AWA photo.
Oh, yeah.
Andre's in there with Otto Vons and everyone else.
Who knows? Well, there you go. I wish there was minutes taken of these meetings, contemporaneous notes, as they say in the news business, of all these meetings.
I like how many bullshit sheiks popped up. Like, Iron Sheik I get. All of a sudden, Fred Blassie's Ayatollah Blassie. Yeah. Hercules Hernandez all of a sudden becomes a sheik. Ken Patera and Jerry Blackwell become sheiks. So many random sheiks.
Because of the evil influence of Sheik Adnan El-Casey.
Of course.
He was kind of almost really a sheik, but I'll have you know I tried to keep Hercules Hernandez from defecting to sheikdom when he was my bodyguard, but once I sold him to Skandor Akbar, there was no turning back.
That's right. It's all your fault. But Jim, a lot of things are your fault. Let's get to our next segment here.
The next segment is entitled Things That Are Jim Cornette's Fault.
We don't have enough time for that one.
Hey!
We could try that for one of the omnibus collections.